Dive into today's top story, which is the world is waking up to the fact that the globalists and their globalist agenda to depopulate the world and move us off of hydrocarbons, move us off of fossil fuels, whatever you want to call it, is failing. And I'm going to show you an unbelievable moment that actually just happened in Australia. You won't believe it. So all of our Australian viewers, you will get a kick out of this. I mean, this is global. It goes to Vietnam. It goes to Canada. It goes all around the world. Vietnam this afternoon, gas stations starting to close because of gas shortages there. While the U.S. awaits with bated breath, as Tyler Durden reports, see if there will be any diesel in inventories in the midterm elections or afterwards. Of course, the diesel stocks are running dry. Vietnam can't keep their pumps going. Meanwhile, China sees the writing on the wall, has massively increased its oil imports from Russia as they ready preparations for reopening. So China is taking the necessary precautions. I spoke to a journalist today in Serbia that says they're going to be okay this winter because they've made they've got their gas agreements made with Russia, so they're able to get their cheap gas. And
sure, but they got their hand slapped from the West for doing that. Olaf Scholz is happy to put them in the corner to think about what they've done, but in the meantime, they will at least be able to survive.
Yeah, they won't be freezing. The U.S., meanwhile, the Biden administration is on damage control this evening because their demented leader keeps telling the truth in public. He's telling the truth about this man-made energy crisis. We'll also have more on that in a minute, but first, where did this all start? Where did this man-made energy crisis and this plan all start? Well, it started to take us off of hydrocarbons. Did it start with, and where did the soup-throwing kids come into all of this? And to take us off of hydrocarbons and depopulate the world. Well, the World Economic Forum is on the record on multiple occasions admitting that the key to solving the so-called climate crisis is population control, combined with ending hydrocarbons. You can read all about it. United Nations website, they've got it there. It's not fantasy. You can definitely see it. You can also read it in the World Economic Forum's plans. Reduce the population. You fix the problem. Here's Christiana Figueres from the United Nations laying out their reasoning. Watch this.
Stopping the rise in population would be one of the biggest levers in driving the rise in greenhouse gases. Is that...
Well, I mean, we all know we expect 9 billion, right, by 2050. So yes, obviously less people would exert less pressure on the natural resources, and that's...
So is 9 billion a foregone conclusion that's like baked in, done, no way to change that?
Well, there again, there's pressure in the system to go toward that. We can definitely change those, right? We can definitely change those numbers. And we really should make every effort to change the numbers because we are already exceeding the planetary carrying capacity today.
Not true.
Well, she is the same person who said that meat eaters should eat in a separate area of the restaurant and should be treated as if like a sinner area, and then people who are not choosing to eat meat.
It's crazy. So if you eat meat, you need to be, or even she said, sit outside. While the rest of the people are eating vegetarian.
Like a smoking and a non-smoking section, that meat eaters should be treated like second-class citizens because of
just
their
to prove a point. I should walk into when I'm eating my steaks and just toss it on the floor and eat it over in the corner away from everybody.
Like a dog.
Just to prove her. Yeah, just
out
like
of
a dog. Because that's basically what she's saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we don't need this population. We're already at capacity. There's things that we can do right now to depopulate the planet. And of course, she's not the only member of the WEF that admitted to this. So I bookmarked this last week. This is crazy. Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote the book Sapiens. Remember this book, Sapiens? He gave a TED Talk, and then after his TED Talk, bookmarked this interview last week where he sat down and did like a wide-ranging discussion about the TED Talk. So it's like an hour and 20 minutes. I encourage you to listen to it because it's a whole lot of interesting crazy. Where he explains why we need massive population control. He says you just don't need the vast majority of the population. Listen.
We just don't need the vast majority of the population. And whatever people are still doing, which is useful, these technologies increasingly will make redundant and will make it possible to replace the people. So a lot of humans will be left behind.
And he basically said, if you listen to the interview, he's like, We've gone through all the Industrial Revolution where we needed a lot of these people. We just don't need them anymore. So we need to now depopulate. We need to move towards robots. This is the plan.
It's very Darwinistic.
Yeah. So, and then these Western-backed leaders fall right in place. I mean, they're carrying out this agenda from New Zealand to the United States to Canada, everywhere in between. You take away people's food, you take away people's fuel, and this is exactly what happens. This is how you get to carbon net zero more quickly. President Biden has repeatedly promised to eliminate coal plants, oil drilling. Here is Biden from the past. Here is in 2020 telling everyone how he and Obama destroyed coal plants. Watch.
That's why in our administration we wiped out no more coal plants. That's why we spent. There is one in hand. We can't do it all at once. We're working on it, kid. We're working on it. Why don't you sit down? I promise you.
Just sit down,
Very
little lady. Sit down, kid.
Sit down and shut up.
Sit down and shut up. We know there's one in your backyard. We're working on eliminating it, okay? Me and my boy Obama, we've literally gotten rid of all of them, okay? Except for that one. We're getting to get to that one. Here's Biden this weekend, and once again telling us that he's going to eliminate coal and force them into wind energy and solar. Watch.
So it's going to become a wind generation. And all they're doing is they're going to save them a hell of a lot of money and using the same transmission line they transmitted the coal-fired electric on. We're going to be shutting these plants down all across America and having wind and solar.
Okay. So wind and solar, right? So
I mean, his
You have a lot of
energy
thoughts.
level between the two thoughts, the two different
Sound
sound
bites,
bites, it's just in 2 years. Like his,
he's like, why am I doing this? Am I really doing this anymore? I'm still carrying the water for this stuff. I don't even believe what I'm saying. Maybe he does. I don't know. It's so ingrained in there. It's just like rattling around up in there that he just keeps regurgitating it. So,
but it does feel very much the way he is delivering these is the way, the press took the piss out of Trump for just delivering the hits. Like he's just used to saying things like, does it mean, lower gas prices? Does it mean something that I can signal that it's green? Does it mean something I can stand in front of that looks like a solar panel? I'm just going to say those things. They're just gobbledygook.
Right. Frosty Young, thank you for your super chat. Frosty Young says the World Economic Forum is going to Mount Sinai this weekend and remaking the Ten Commandments. Who do these people think they are? Definitely not my God. Destroy half the world's population. It's amazing. So what did Biden mean? Did he mean it, or was he just speaking out of turn? Well, the White House...
I think, again, that he's just saying the words. Sounds like I'm for green stuff. Let's just say those words.
You don't think he really means it? I mean, I think he absolutely is in the tank for this.
No, I do think that he means it.
I think he meant it before, but I think now he's just out there just reading what he's told to say, and he's got a, they have an agenda that they pass to him, and they're like, look, just focus on these points, focus on these points. Where when he was more in his right mind, he did care about these things, and he fought against these things or for these things.
I think he knows. Yeah. I think he knew in that clip that we showed from 2 years ago, he knew how to present this in a way that was like, we're for the green stuff, but we're going to transition there nicely. And now he kind of knows the plan is we're going to, get rid of all affordable energy for most people. Their lives are going to suck. We'll present this in a political way, but he no longer has, I hate to say this, the sort of the star power to say those things it just comes across the way he's not supposed to.
So did he mean it or not? Let us know in the chat what you think. Did he mean it or not? I think he's programmed. He knows he's been harping on this stuff for years. He worked with Obama on this, and I think it's just rattling around up there, and he just regurgitates this. The White House, though, is now backtracking on this, and they're in damage control. And frankly, this is just absolutely embarrassing to watch them have to walk this back. Watch.
So we just wanted to be very clear on that, which is why we put out a statement. It seemed like there was some confusion on that, and so, I want to say this: it was some of you were there. It was loud and hard to hear.
We're going to be shutting these plants down all across America.
I think, or maybe not exactly what was being said, but I currently don't want to get into punditry from here and why we did it or did it on TV. But I spoke to this over the weekend. The president's words, we believe, were twisted.
Oh, they were
I
twisted.
think in those moments, she was reconsidering her life choices.
Yeah, she's like, what the hell did I sign up for? Oh, my God.
$100,000 a year. I could be doing something else for $100,000 a year.
What are you going to say?
Really
Philip?
understand what she said. Like, it was so hard to follow even what she was saying.
There are some points that I'll pull out of that, right? So she said, and maybe we should play it again. Let's play it again. I think it'll be much more clear to you when you see it a second time. Can you cue that up again? Let's watch. She's very clear. Very clear.
So we just wanted to be very clear on that, which is why we put out a statement. It seemed like there was some confusion on that, and so, I want to say this. It was, some of you were there. It was loud and hard to hear.
We're going to be shutting these plants down all across America.
I think, or maybe not exactly what was being said, but I currently don't want to get into punditry from here and why we did it or did it on TV. But I spoke to this over the weekend. The president's words, we believe, were twisted.
So that's okay. It was loud.
You have a copy?
You have totally. Yeah, I read the transcript, and they issued a separate statement. So Jean-Pierre issued a separate written statement that said the president's words were twisted and it was too loud. It was very loud there. So you didn't hear it. You didn't hear it, and someone else twisted. So someone else twisted his words around. So this reporter...
Is that suggesting that it was edited and twisted, or is that suggesting that, like, how is she suggesting it was twisted?
Well, we have clarification on this.
Yeah,
the CBS reporter actually asked her, how was this twisted? And this is her response.
And just really briefly to clarify something you mentioned here at the podium, you mentioned about the president's statement or what the president said on Saturday regarding coal. You mentioned a couple times or repeated a couple times today that those words were twisted. So who twisted them? Did Manchin twist them? Did someone else twist them?
It's how it was reported out was being twisted. So if you, and I want to be really clear because this is important, if you read the full transcript, the president was very clear commenting on a fact of economics and technology, as it has been from its earliest days as an energy superpower. America is once again in the midst of an energy transition, and the president is determined to make sure that this transition helps all Americans, and he's been very clear about that. And these weren't some novel comments as they were taken and twisted to be. The president has talked for years about this energy transition and the need to support coal communities through it, and so it was twisted by many others, and so we wanted to make sure that there was some clarity.
Okay, the question was who twisted it, and she comes back with it was twisted. So there's no subject there. Who did that? Because we all understood something.
Just don't ask those questions. Move on. Next question, please. Like, you're not allowed.
Watch that girl's face. When somebody's telling you an answer and you finally get it, you're like, oh, and she never had that aha, I get it moment in her face when she was listening to that.
Yeah.
No, someone in our chat said
like,
it's a clown world. You know, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be around these people. Another reporter, though, tried to get the answer as well. So she tried to get it, and then a male reporter tried to get it, but she dodges this. Watch.
And we've laid that down very clearly. You heard from my statement. You heard from what I just said here today.
He said we're shutting those plants down.
Go ahead, Phil. There's take question.
Yeah, so it's very clear. We're shutting those plants down. Move on. Nothing to see here.
Well, what I legitimately think about this is that the president probably knows that there is a plan to shut down all affordable energy in this sort of grander plan. And as they talk to him, they say, well, say these things that, we're going to gradually shift to clean energy. We're going to start to move away from these things. But people who are starting to have mental decline, people who are aging and maybe suffering from some kind of, I don't want to say the words, but you know what I mean, like elderly people who start to lose their mental capacity.
Like dementia?
Yes.
Or Alzheimer's?
I didn't know if we were allowed to say that. But when you are suffering from those things, studies show that your memories are last in, first out. It's kind of like the last things that you heard are the first things to go. And I think that he just doesn't have anymore the capacity to massage this message any longer. So we're just going to get it in a way that a maybe more with it politician could not terrify us.
Yeah. Okay. So, of course, no one twisted his words. I mean, this is the plan. And so it might have been last in, first out. It might have been first in, last out. Who the hell knows what order it came in? It's certainly been in there for years because his boss has said this. He worked on this plan with President Obama. We're going to be moving from coal to wind because you're going to bankrupt these coal producers. That's what we're going to do. We're going to bankrupt these fossil fuel producers. Here's his boss explaining it.
So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
Oh, okay. So you can try to build one, but you're going to be run out of business because we're going to regulate the crap out of you, so you won't be able to do it. His whole team is on board with this. Biden's climate czar, John Kerry, just flew in his private jet to the COP conference and said the same thing as Biden just did.
By 2030 in the United States, we will not have coal plants. By 2035, President Biden has set a target that we will be, in our power sector, carbon-free.
Oh, carbon-free. Jennifer Granholm, Energy Secretary for President Biden. All, again, on the same page. They're all reiterating what's coming from the president's mouth. Watch.
We obviously are all in on making sure that we meet the president's goals of getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And, if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you, clearly.
So, yeah, go out and buy an electric car, you peons. You can't afford it, I know, but you should go anyway. You should go and buy an electric car for $60,000.
The grid that powers those electric cars is not clean, but okay, that sounds good for you to say.
I mean, what a clown world we're living in. And then after all of that, so we have President Biden saying that on coal. Then he's walking back his coal comments. So the White House is on damage control, issuing statements. Please don't talk in public anymore. Please don't do it. In fact, this afternoon they put a lid on the White House, so the president's not speaking anymore. They announced.
Go back to the basement.
Yeah, go back to your bunker. Do not talk anymore. Then he goes and does it again yesterday when he thinks the camera, I don't know if he knows the cameras are rolling or what's going on. Someone asks him about oil drilling. An activist, an environmental activist is like, yeah, but there's still oil drilling going on, Mr. President. When are you going to stop all of this oil drilling? And he didn't, I guess, realize the cameras were rolling because this happened.
No more drilling. There is no more drilling. I haven't formed any new drilling. No, that was before I was president. We're trying to work on that, get that done. Thank you.
Yeah, so what are you doing? There's still drilling going on in the Gulf of Mexico. There's still drilling going on in the Arctic. There's still drilling going on in Alaska. When are you going to end all of this? We're working on it. We're getting there. We're getting there. So this is global, right? So in Australia yesterday, something amazing happened. This is an amazing piece of video that I want you to grab. Wake up, Grandma. If Grandma's not awake, wake her up, slap her on the arm and say, Grandma, wake up and watch this. It's an amazing piece of video. You should be proud of a politician like this, a man who should be praised, a man by the name of Senator Gerard Rennick. He's been exposing the liars that are pushing this alarmist agenda away from hydrocarbons towards renewables. He asked a simple question during a Senate hearing. All of you clowns are trying to move Australia to carbon zero by 2030. Do you have any idea what that will cost to put solar and wind energy transmission lines in? And, of course, the degradation of that energy as it travels across those transmission lines. Like, how much is this infrastructure going to cost? What is the degradation of energy across these lines? Do you guys know any of this? Watch one of the best pieces of video I've seen in weeks. Watch.
Senator Rennick.
Yeah, hi guys. So just to confirm, it is 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines that you're looking to actually having to implement to reach the target. 43%.
I'm probably not the expert on that, but my understanding is there are a number of ISP scenarios that range from 5,000 kilometres to 28,000 kilometres by 2050 to support various versions of the ISP.
Right, okay. So if you don't know the distance, then you're not going to know how much it's going to cost either. Is that fair to say?
Correct. and what properties are involved and the impacts, etc.
Okay, which begs the next question then, Senator McAllister, given that the Leader of the Senate, Senator Wong, constantly says that renewables are cheaper. How can you possibly say renewables are cheaper when you actually don't even know the cost in building the transmission lines?
Senator Rennick, there are many leaps of logic in the way that you pose that question.
No, there's not actually.
Essentially, Australia's electricity system is organised with the assistance of 3 market bodies. The Integrated Systems Plan describes the network requirements that will be needed to deliver on new capacity, and the market responds to that descriptor. Rewiring the Nation intervenes in this way. It says where a transmission line needs to be built, we will create the capacity to provide low-cost finance.
Okay, so we've got a range of what, as low as 5,000 kilometres to as high as 28,000 kilometres, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Right, okay. So will the Rewiring Australia Fund, which is $20 billion, be able to actually fund the cost of what could potentially be 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines?
We are very confident that the Rewiring the Nation Fund will have a very significant impact on the development of the system. Ms. Brunero may be able to provide you a bit more detail about some of the details about different approaches in different states.
Yes, so in terms of funding transmission in the board, it's important to say that the Rewiring the Nation policy won't be doing all of those transmission funding, and it isn't directed at that. It is directed at the actionable projects that are come through the Integrated System Plan. And what Mr. Dyer is talking about are the different scenarios in there around getting to net zero by 2050, and some of there's the step change scenario that most experts think is the most relevant. But the reason why there's a higher level in some of those scenarios, it's the hydrogen superpower.
So we literally have no idea what the hell we're doing.
But they're speaking a good game as if they are all convinced that they do.
I mean,
we believe when he says, how are we going to fund that? He's like, well, when we find out how much we need, there'll be systems in place to respond to that. That will be that we'll be able to pay for it.
It's a joke. It's a total clown show.
That's crazy town.
So was that the bullshit alarm that was going off in the background too?
Yeah, they're like, oh,
it's like a hit. Like
I heard that too. I'm like, oh no, you're bullshit.
That's a crescendo of bullshit alarms.
Your time is up. You bring the truck full of bullshit to the back of the room right now. I mean, but again, that's Australia. The same thing is happening in New Zealand. The same thing is happening in the Netherlands. They're all getting their marching orders from these globalists. And the emperor has no clothes. I mean, we're seeing it right now. You cannot run a society on wind and solar. You cannot do it.
No. In fact, I believe Bjorn Lomborg in his great book, False Alarm, talks about a community in Africa somewhere that was built completely off the grid, and kids couldn't do their homework at night, and they were begging to be connected to the grid because they just couldn't sustain. And we're telling them, oh, you're Africans, you need less than us. So here's just a little bit of electricity. You're not like us where you need to like plug in your toothbrushes and connect it to the internet, just deal with less.
Just deal with less.
And
that's
they're like, but actually we'd like to catch up with the developed world and do homework at night. Is that okay? No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You don't need that.
And by the way, continue to eat plant-based food, or eat Beyond Meat burgers or whatever the hell else. You're not going to have actual food. And eat bugs. Continue to do that. The other argument is, what about nuclear?
Hey,
of course. And what about nuclear?
Japan fought it for 100 years, so I think they could do it, right? They fought developing, so it's possible.
I mean, I'm not sure, but I think most people are hoping to come up to a certain standard of life in order to compete in the developed world. And the data never shows that you can remove comforts from somebody's life in order to achieve political gain. This is something that is a major shift for me, I'd say, in the year 2022. The more reading I do, the more I realize, it actually doesn't do any good to tell people to live with less.
Like I saw somebody on Twitter when I saw a response to the president talking about getting rid of coal and oil, and someone said, good. And another person said, well, what are you going to replace it with? He said, solar and wind and nuclear. And I just thought, okay, you literally don't know what you're talking about. You can't. You lack
Well,
education
nuclear,
because hold on. So nuclear specifically, 50% of our nuclear enriched uranium comes from Russia. The other 50% comes from Kazakhstan. So when we're trying to be completely away from Russia, the United States has zero uranium production. Zero. We get all of it turnkey from Russia. Russia internally has the discoverability of uranium, the enrichment of uranium, and the delivering of uranium to countries like the United States. So we don't have anything because we've basically shut it all down and outsourced
Nor do we make any solar panels. Most of those come from Asia, also sanctioned. Right. So, okay, that's nice. Maybe that person likes camping 365 days a year, but it's not for you to tell other people to live that way.
And just forget for a second that these technologies still cannot power the United States or any of the developed world. There's a fraction of it because in most of them, all of them run emergency backup on electricity, with coal. So you need fossil fuels, hydrocarbons, whatever you want to call them, to power these things.
And by many estimates, if all the power turned out right now in the developed world, we'd have about a minute and a half of battery life to keep us going.
Meaning because from solar batteries.
Right, from renewable energies. Like we don't have any backup. We need a constant stream of affordable energy.
I mean, this is their plan. This is not tinfoil hat stuff, guys. They've told us this is exactly what they want. The speed of the transition away from hydrocarbons. They want it as quickly as possible. You listen to every member of the Biden administration telling you that. Every one of them. And it's not just the Biden administration, it's all around the world. All of these globalists and all of these globalist leaders who are following lockstep with what the World Economic Forum wants.